We got my guy, Derek Montilla, on there from PHXN. If I say that right, PHNX Sports,
yes,
PHNX Diamondbacks. He's going to be joining us to talk a little bit of D-backs, one of the hotter teams since summer has started. So we'll kind of dive into them for about the first 20 minutes, 25 minutes of the show here. And of course, Josh Edwards, that always gets us started. He's back after a week vacation, looking refreshed up there, that voice ready to go. Brandon didn't throw you off with the intro this week, Edwards, so we're ready to roll as well. Derek, as we mentioned before we came on, thanks, man, for taking some time to join us and giving us a little perspective from the D-back side as well. So thanks for taking the time this evening.
No problem, guys. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Edwards, what was it, D-backs last year? I felt like you were on that train a little bit, right?
I took the D-backs early last year, and then this year I didn't think they were going to be able to repeat, but let's be honest. I thought they were going to be better than they were the first half of the season, and now they're kind of where I expected them to be. So I can't say I backed them 100% from the beginning like I did last year, but they were my hot take last year at the beginning of the season. They were my sleeper pick.
That's well said with your hot take with it. Derek, I'm curious to get your thoughts with the D-backs here. They make the World Series run, last year, obviously late in that 6th seed. I guess for me, the stands out to me is the offense. I'm just curious to get your perspective, to get their thought. Yeah, Marte's the talk of the town, right? We did a show a couple weeks ago on him being the NL MVP conversation, but then professional hitters all over your lineup. I just kind of want to start there with you with the D-backs. I feel like the offense is carrying the load this year. I'll get some of the stuff up here on the screen, but your thoughts on their offense here.
Their offense has been surprising, and I think early on in the year, that's kind of what was missing, right? When they struggled in April and May, you look at some of the numbers, you look at the guys that were struggling, and it's no secret as to why they were not doing well. It was due to the lack of offense, and I mean, the Diamondbacks already had some really good things going from last year. Obviously, they had the incredible postseason run that they had. But they really did go out there and acquire what they thought was, some big bats to add to this lineup. And now those are the guys that you're seeing that have added so much to the offense this year. Gino Suarez, who struggled early on, has been incredible for this team lately. Jock Peterson has been one of the best hitters on this team. And that's just amazing to say because, of course, you bring Jock Peterson in as a DH, you expect to get some power out of him. You expect to maybe see some regression there, but now that he's not playing in San Francisco any longer, he's just, he's hitting the ball really well. And it's it goes beyond that. He's not just hitting, home runs, even though I think he's up to 20 now. He's getting a lot of singles. He's getting a lot of doubles. He works the count really well. He's taking really good at bats. It's gotten to the point that he's become a leader for this team. He's become a mentor for some of the young guys. In fact, Jake McCarthy, who's been absolutely on fire lately, moved his locker in the clubhouse over next to Jock Peterson's. And now Jock Peterson is kind of taken Jake under his wing a bit. And of course, the result is that Jake has become the best hitter on the team. And, they continue to get unlikely offense from sources that you wouldn't think would work out. You have Christian Walker go down due to injury. You go out and get Josh Bell for cash considerations at the trade deadline. And Josh Bell just comes over and starts raking and giving this team some very, very timely hits. Then, you even have, a situation where Gabby Moreno, their star catcher, goes down. They call up Adrian Del Castillo, and this kid becomes a legend in the first 10 games, that he's playing for this team. So there's definitely some good vibes going for them because it feels like every move they make is kind of working out right now.
I mean, the stats are there. It's not like you're these are well, they're coming on hot. It's no, you're first in the NL at RBIs. You're first in the NL at runs. It's not like these are just poo-poo stats. Your average is there. You lead the league in triples. Your stadium is an underrated triple stadium. I've always said that. You guys always have random guys like David Peralta that lead the league in triples. It's you guys are there with it. You're right there with doubles. You guys are raking. And I just feel with your offense carrying the load, and I mean, then Edward, you chime in after this, is the pitching though is where I thought it was going to be the strength, and it's kind of turned out to be opposite. Josh, a big Jordan Montgomery guy, right? Edwards, the pitching it's good.
I was a little jelly.
Deep dive into it more, but that's where you were that to me, I was that's going to be the strength, and it necessarily hasn't been that way. Does that seem fair?
It's absolutely fair. I mean,
Yeah,
it's been due to injury in part. The large part of it has been injury. And due to that, the Diamondbacks have kind of had some guys that stepped up. Brandon Pfaadt has been
he's been
very
good.
good for this team all year. Ryan Nelson over the last month and a half has become an all-star. The man has, I think, like 9 of his last, since July 1st, like 9 of his outings have been like 1 earned run or less. And this is the person they're considering sending down out of the lineup or moving into the bullpen or doing something with. And it's kind of difficult, right? Jordan Montgomery has not been what they thought he was going to be. He oddly gets a lot of like run support when he's
Yeah,
out
he
there. Like he
does.
gets like nearly 7 runs per game per outing, so he's like the guy that gets all the run support. But it's been a bit disappointing, and I'm sure that goes all the way around. Like Jordan Montgomery has had a disappointing year. He had a disappointing offseason. He parted ways with his agent, which is Scott Boras, which a lot of players don't do that. And there's just been a lot of, kind of unfortunate things that have happened for him this year. And he hasn't been performing. I mean, at this point, it's looking likely that he's going to be a Diamondback next year. And I think, he might be a different pitcher to once he has like a normal offseason and has a chance to go through spring training and do everything again. But it's just interesting because now they're going with the 6-man rotation, and a big part of that is because they don't really want to move Ryan Nelson out of this rotation with how good he's been, and Jordan Montgomery just costs them entirely too much money for them to try to find some other option for him. I mean, it's I feel like it's a financial decision impacting what they really want to do, but for now they do have a deep starting rotation of guys that are still trying to find their way. Zach Gallen has struggled this year. He's struggled with like first pitch strikes, getting ahead in the count. But you got Merrill Kelly, Eduardo Rodriguez, both coming back from injuries, and that's still just, it's baseball, right? Like nothing is a quick thing. Eduardo Rodriguez seems to be doing good. Erod has had some good outings, and it feels like he's building up and getting there. And they have some time, right? Like they have some time between now and the end of the season to figure this out. This is a good time for them to be taking a good look at their starting rotation, and if they do make the playoffs, deciding which of these pieces they're going to really look to, which of these guys they're going to look to in the postseason. I have a feeling, it probably won't be Jordan Montgomery at this point, which is just crazy to say, considering how good he was last year in the postseason. Just insane.
I think if he's with you guys next year, like we suspect, I think you get a totally different pitcher.
I do too.
I think you get everything you thought you were supposed to get this year, and he becomes a leader, and your rotation is just going to be sick.
Well,
it's going to be absolutely ridiculous.
A lot of Diamondbacks fans are obviously very impatient with him, but it's like if you see them do something drastic, like we know they're not going to, but like fans constantly want teams to do. It's like you're going to see this guy go shove for some other team, and it's going to infuriate you when that happens. You know what I mean? Like that the only time he was bad was literally his time with us. So I kind of, we say it over and over again. Baseball is a mental sport more than any other sport.
No doubt.
It's really hard to go through the instability that Montgomery went through this offseason and even during the season and still, expect him to be as good as he was. I think he will get back on track, though. I agree with you.
To that point, like I know Blake Snell's pitching better now, but he did have a struggle when he signed late a little bit further. So I mean, I think that's a part of it. And some GMs I know I've heard in just conversations like, "Oh, we're not going to do that again. We'll see if they hold themselves to that." But that's what I've been hearing through it. What if I had to put
and there was one point, not to cut you off, but there was
go ahead.
Jordan Montgomery is like the last starting pitcher standing, right? You had Gallen down, you had Merrill Kelly down, you had Eduardo Rodriguez down. It was him and Brandon Pfaadt, and I think that. Like, if you want to talk about other things that might have impacted him, I felt like there was a lot of pressure on him to now, like, suddenly be the guy for this team while he's surrounded by a bunch of, young, inexperienced players that they were kind of calling up from, AAA to come fill the gap. And I think that was part of it as well.
How are you guys feeling about Kelly and Gallen? I'm curious on your thoughts. Like last year, they were so good, right? In October and late September, like so good, like Cy Young worthy for a lot. And I'm just curious, obviously they haven't had, it's a weird looking at your guys' pitching stats. The innings pitch number is kind of funny looking at.
Oh yeah.
The starters there. It's kind of, I think you said Fott's the only one that's even eligible for anything if it was kind of based on that. So
correct.
What do you kind of make of those two guys? Because obviously as we will move into the conversation a little bit into your postseason thoughts, and like where you guys are looking like you're going to get there, those two guys are going to play a heavy role. What's kind of your thoughts with those two, the big horses of the rotation, a little bit?
I think Merrill's still working his way back to what he was, but I'm fairly confident that it's just, that time being back from that injury and not really having a lot of games under his belt right now. But Zach, I feel like, is a bit more concerning. Zach always was consistent for this team. I mean, he set a major league record for the number of starts in a career with allowing 3 earned runs or less. And that's kind of what Zach gives you, even on a bad outing, even when he doesn't have his best stuff or he doesn't have a feel for his pitches, he's still going to give you 3 earned, 6 innings. And you're still like, that wasn't a bad night for most major league pitchers. Right. So like Gallen is that. And I'm concerned that it's like an injury thing because he keeps having like cramps. He keeps having issues with his delivery at times. There's with that kind of stuff, it can just be a nagging kind of situation where it's not really going away and it's not bad enough to put you on the IL, but it is bad enough to impact you as a pitcher. And of course, the one thing Zach has always been able to do is work ahead in the count, and that's not what we're seeing lately. So, again, you have the command kind of tied at times to physical ailments or things that might not be right with their mechanics, and that's kind of where we're at. But I mean, honestly, for this fan base, for a lot of people that root for this team, Zach Gallen is like the player that everybody wants to see them lock down, right? And so that's part of this too, is that Zach Gallen was kind of up there in the Cy Young conversation last year. He led this team in the postseason, and he had his struggles even in the postseason, but I mean, he has just been excellent ever since joining it, ever since they traded for him. So like, he's just, he's that guy that people want to see stay a Diamondback for the rest of his career. The interesting thing we'll see is between, whatever happens the rest of this year, what happens in the postseason, and, what happens next year, how that could impact him staying in Arizona, because, a big part of that and a big part of his value has been that consistency that he's always been able to deliver.
It's interesting with Gallen too, is like you said, like the fan base relates to him because I think they see a dog out there. They see somebody that's like kind of like stuck with them over the years a little bit. And last year was a magical run he had with them. And I mean, there is a fair case. I always feel like he threw a lot of innings last year. There is maybe there is that kind of thought that sometimes with pitchers and like give him another year to just kind of reboot again and get there. I think that could happen.
Yeah.
I feel you. As an A's fan, it's always nice to have somebody out here that you can actually like rely on and know they're going to be there.
Yes.
As a D-backs fan, I can say, it's nice to know that you can have Gallen there year in and year out.
Yeah,
and he's going to give you 3 runs and less for the most part. And so,
and it's been the talking point. It really has, where people are just, they assume that he will not be a Diamondback anymore after his contract is up. And I think a big part of that is the fact that at times when players do have like Scott Boras for an agent, for instance, they don't tend to sign, they don't tend to sign engagement or extensions. And, again, it just feels like with how he was pitching up until, the things that kind of plagued him this season, he was, an elite level pitcher, and he really was starting to become part of that conversation. And I still think he's there. I just think that there, is some sort of like, not an injury, but something that hurts him a little bit, that he has to go out there and kind of play through every day.
That makes sense. I mean, I found it interesting. You guys were talking, and I think it was today, you were talking about with your co-host about what teams, if you guys made the playoffs, what team you would fear a little bit more. He mentioned that Edwards will get it. I've been a big Brewers person on this pod, and maybe it's just to a fault, but I found it funny that your co-host was like, you'd be an idiot to think the Brewers. I was like, well, I'm an idiot then. I was like, I think the Brewers could give you a little bit more running for the Padres. And for me, I know the Padres, it's like, you think through it, like you said, Cease, all this and that. But there's something about the Brewers this year that I just kind of find a little bit more interesting. So I did find that your guys' conversation with that to be very interesting with that.
Here's probably why that is that the Diamondbacks still have 6 more games to play against the Brewers. So there hasn't been that chance to really like see them in person, right? See Jackson Chourio and how good he is in person, right? We all might be singing a different tune once we, go to Milwaukee and have them come here, because those 2 series are fairly close together. And here at the end of the season, when they're, pretty important for the Diamondbacks, right? As they kind of fight here. I think the thing is that the Diamondbacks do kind of get pushed around a little bit here in the National League West between, our big brothers, the Dodgers and the Padres with the players they have and everything. And, I do think that the one thing the Diamondbacks have over both of those teams is that this team is deep. There's depth here, and they're constructed in a way where anybody can kind of beat you on any given night versus needing like the stars to kind of come through for you. That was one of the keys when the Diamondbacks beat the Dodgers last year, right? In the postseason, was that they were able to hold Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman, basically limit them. And if you can limit those guys, and the rest of the lineup really wasn't going to hurt you last year. Now they have Ohtani, and that's a very difficult task. That's a whole different thing, right?
A one of one task. One
of one for sure. Yeah. But like, again, I mean, it's one of those things where I think the reason why people say that, including my co-host, is because that's the path they went through last year. And despite the fact that, the Diamondbacks, nobody thought the Diamondbacks were on the World Series level yet, even getting to the World Series. And that includes us here in Arizona, right? We were a team that lost 110 games not that long ago, right? Or 100, whatever it was, like, and so, like, I mean, we're talking about, like, you kind of have to make those steps as a professional franchise. And it felt like they were, right? They went from having a terrible season to having a season where they were fairly close to 500 to having an above 500 season where they made the playoffs. And so, like, all right, well, that's cool. Like, we're going to go play Milwaukee. Neat. Like, we'll probably lose, but whatever. And of course, going through the path that they went through was kind of on paper, I guess you could say, the easier path, but it really wasn't. It went through the Dodgers. It went through the Phillies. Like, they didn't have an easy path. It's just that's kind of the way fans see it. Like, this is a different Dodgers team this year. This is a different Phillies team this year. So it's like, again, it's like, I don't know if I'm super excited to play either of those teams. I will say the conversation we have been having a bit, though, has been about like winning the division, right? Because
I heard that today.
They're getting close.
There's a chance.
They're getting close, right? And again, it's just the idea here that the Dodgers have suffered a lot of injuries. I mean, all these teams have. The Padres have. The Diamondbacks were like handicapped early in the season by the amount of injuries they had, right? But they've all kind of overcome that. They're all playing really good baseball at the same time. Like, it's crazy. They were saying, like, the other day that the entire NL West is 40 games over 500 as a division, and no other division in baseball is even over 500. So that just goes to show how good these teams have been. And it ain't the Rockies that are winning all those games. So, you know what I mean? But like, I'll say that, like, when it comes to the idea of winning the division, like we saw last year, and we've seen in the past, that like having that layoff might not be the best thing. That sounds crazy to say. All of these people I do this show with all tell me that it's loser talk to say that. But I will say, like, there's something to be said about the consistency of baseball and staying in a rhythm. And that's why teams get good. That's why they get hot. That's why all of a sudden they become unbeatable for like 2 weeks straight. It's because they got themselves in a rhythm. And sometimes when you take that break and you get that rest and you play those, whatever scrimmage games against the other team or against the AAA team or whatever, it's not the same. And it's not going to be the same as going through that first round and having to fight for your life in the wild card round. Like, I'm not saying that playing more games is a better idea. And I'm not saying that, like, oh, I wouldn't want them to win the division. I just think there's something to be said about the fact that the last two National League representatives in the World Series for the last 2 years were the final team that made it, the final wild card team. And that's because those teams never really stopped playing baseball for more than a day.
Well, your opponent last year, the Rangers, I think, right? We're in the same boat last year as well. So I know
exactly.
I know Edwards believes in that as well. I know we got you from. Hopefully, we keep you on for just a few more minutes here.
For sure.
I want to kind of go back to what you said though when you were talking about like you don't have a lot of. I think what you meant was like you don't have you have a lot of depth, but you do have a star, and I think it is definitely. And I think it is Marte.
Oh, he absolutely is.
But I as a fan, I've had him on like fantasy baseball teams forever now since he's been in. He's always hurt though, right? Like that is kind of his little bugaboo at times.
Yeah.
And he's hurt again right now. There's obviously you want him hurt now than before the playoffs. So you're good. He's just an unreal hitter.
Well, and part of that, honestly, like going back to when he got like the All-Star nomination, right? Like
yeah,
he had tears in his eyes when he talked about that this was the first time he had played pain-free in 2 years. And to hear a baseball player kind of say that and admit that just once again goes to say that thing I said earlier, right? Where they're still out there, they're still playing, but they're hurt. Things hurt, and it it impacts how fast they are, impacts a lot of the type of player that they are or who they could be, right? So like we don't really think about that at times as fans, but yeah, no, I mean, this was an unfortunate injury where Garrett Stubbs kind of slid into him in an awkward way, and it kind of folded his ankle in. It seemed like it was just going to be like a day or two he missed, and it was just going to be a contusion. Then he tried to play on it, and man, in 2 at bats that he tried to get out there and swing in 2 different games, he literally like collapsed to the ground, and you were like, you're like, no more, get this guy out of here. Like, let's wrap him up and keep him fine until the playoffs or whatever we need to do. Like it sucks that, you lose Cattell, but I guess that's the idea there is even the loss of Cattell isn't this huge impact. Kevin Newman's been playing tremendous defense at second base. Yeah. They went out and picked up Luis Guillermo, who comes in and has been really good in his first start for this team as well. And I mean, the offense is continuing to roll without him. So like, I think that's the thing is there's no, it's not that there's no star, but there's just nobody that's like, that's the main driver of the offense. And without him, it seems like the offense doesn't really go.
I mean, he's a great hitter, but he's just like a professional hitter on every level. So like that's like he's like such a key piece. Edwards, you got anything
to watch?
Oh, he is.
He's like
outside, high, low. It doesn't matter.
Well, and like, he just if you get to see him on second base, like he's always joking with the opposing batters when they come in. But then there's still things he does where he still just does those little like kind of little league faking the throw, but he still has the glove in his hand or the ball in his glove, and he touches the runner just to see if they step off base, and it actually worked in a spring training game. He got it out that way, and it was hilarious. But it's like he plays the game with a tremendous amount of joy, and he's just such a fun player to watch.
And you got him locked up for a little while, so that's good true. As well. You got him locked up there on a good contract from I would think $76 million or something like that for 5 years. Not a bad deal at all.
Yeah, and I mean that Corbin Carroll deal might end up being tremendously good. Obviously, he struggled early on, but the man is a home run machine lately. All of a sudden, after basically having 3 home runs in his first 3 months of playing baseball, or 2 home runs in his first 3 months of baseball, like. He's turned it on. But yeah, this team is a lot of fun to watch. And right now, of course, they still have some difficult like decisions to make with their starting pitching, but it'll be interesting to see. It's not the worst thing in the world to have too much starting pitching for sure.
Never.
So as you guys look ahead to the World Series here again, you made it last year, right? So like that's got to be. I mean, that's where I would think, right? Even if you're at 60, you're thinking there. You have 72 and 56. You guys won 84 games last year, so you're going to probably blow by that record. You would think this season. I mean, the expectations have risen a little bit. You have an MVP candidate, obviously, in Marte. Walker's a stud as well, and you have all these like pieces that have fit. And then you have this kind of odd pitching staff that has just maneuvered its way through the postseason, and now it is in a position, based on our conversation, that is in like any team in the National League would be like, oh, nice, I got 6 starters, let me pick 4.
Yeah, right.
Like you might have to deal with like, okay, do we have the dominant starter? But you have the arms there available in that situation. Like, so I guess I ask you is like, how confident are you in making another late season push? I watched the games a little, I have the MLB package. I'm checking on you guys just as much. The bullpen, I'm still have thoughts about in some regards, but like, what do you make of this team? Like, actually getting back to the World Series, like, are you feeling good about this? Like, I mean, it's hard to say World Series, but like, where do you feel about that?
I think this team can beat any team in any series on any given night. We constantly, once they started playing good baseball, you started having these conversations where it was like, well, let's see how they do against these teams. Let's see how they do against these teams. They almost swept both the Padres and the Dodgers in back-to-back series, and would have if it wasn't for Paul Sewald blowing 2 saves in 2 situations where the Diamondbacks had the lead, right? And I mean, unfortunately, even when the Diamondbacks were very good, they still had that issue with Paul Sewald not being very good. They moved away from him to Justin Martinez, who has some of the most incredible electric stuff I've ever seen out of a pitcher. I mean, the man goes from a 104 mile per hour, fastball high in the zone to a 99 mile per hour sinker. to a 91 mile per hour slider. Like
Nasty.
it's like the stuff that he has is amazing. It's really just about the fact he's 22 and he's still, like he still smells like childhood. You know what I mean? Like the man is still he is closer to being a kid than he is to being an adult. And he's out there in these high leverage situations, absolutely dominating, causing like opposing batters to literally have arguments with the home plate umpire about the pitches he's throwing, right? Because it's kind of unbelievable that he's landing the stuff in the zone that way he is. He just doesn't have that experience yet, and you see it unravel a bit when he has something go wrong for him. If he hits a batter, he walks a guy, maybe has a call that doesn't go his way, you just start to see him, slowly get out of sync, and so there's just obviously, like I said earlier, it's a mental game. So there's just some experience. There's some, kind of sharpening of the iron there for him. But I think that he is very, very good. And I think that, of course, he could be the closer of the future for this team. He could be the closer of the present. It's been who Torrey has been going to there in the ninth inning. I think if they can kind of get to the point where they're comfortable and he's comfortable there, this team can be a pretty interesting team to watch in the postseason. And I mean, after what we saw last year, I do feel like this team is better this year than they were last year. They did it last year with 3 starting pitchers and having a bullpen game at one point during the playoffs. This team did not have the pieces and the weapons that it has this year. The unfortunate part about it has just been the injuries. They've continued to pile up for this team. Cattell, Christian Walker, Gabby Moreno, Zach Gallen, Merrill Kelly, Eduardo Rodriguez, I feel like every single player on this team, they lost, Geraldo Perdomo and Alec Thomas early on in the season. I mean, Cattell or like Corbin Carroll and Eugenio Suarez have been like the only 2 guys that have kind of stayed healthy all season long and have been their Iron Men. So like there's just been, that factor to overcome. That's not something just exclusive to the Diamondbacks. And almost, I guess the positive is that a lot of those injuries happened early on, like some of them lately, but they'll get Christian Walker back here most likely in time for that series at home with the Mets, or at the latest probably by the Dodgers coming into town. And then questions are still around how long they're going to lose Gabby Moreno for. He has like a strained adductor, like a groin injury.
That's gonna be tough.
Yeah, on a catcher, right? Yeah, like it's not great.
Ridiculous. He's gonna have no pop time, even if he can come back.
Right, exactly. And then you also have the fact that Jose Herrera right now is a below average catcher, in this league right now. He's not doing great. And Adrian Del Castillo has been lighting the league on fire as far as, his offense, but he still is adapting as a major league catcher behind the plate. So that's probably the biggest question mark for this team, because I mean, obviously, how important a catcher is
absolutely
out there, and
trust me,
to try to have a rookie out there, during the postseason, potentially leading the charge. Like, I believe in him, to be honest, because he's shown a lot of maturity, but I feel like it's a lot to ask.
Yeah, no, I get you. I mean, hell, you guys should talk to us. We could have traded you a catcher who plays great defense. His name is Pedro Pajes. He's actually really good. He's controlled for a while too.
Stop trying to offload
a bomb when needed. So talk to your people, and
I'll get Mike on the phone.
See what we can do. So you can send Goriel over.
No, you can't have him. You can't have him. Thanks to Guriel.
Well, I knew everybody else doesn't know, but.
People at Apple TV confused me for the real mayor of Phoenix, thanks to Lourdes Gurriel last year.
Oh, there you go.
So, there's nothing wrong with that.
You can't go anywhere.
That's great. I guess as we kind of wrap it up here, I just got a couple of things for you. You talked about Carroll. I think we got there. I got one thing, and then we'll wrap it up. Is the Walker situation. How do you feel about him going into next year?
I don't feel great about that. I think that Christian Walker is going to go to free agency. I think he's going to at least test the waters. I feel a little bit. Yeah, I feel no. Stop doing that to our first baseman. You can't keep taking our first baseman.
I will give you Pajes. I'll even give you Goldie back.
All right, well, we can talk about Goldie back. We'll talk about that. But I think Christian Walker is a vastly underrated first baseman, and honestly,
he's so good. That play in Chicago, this year where he lays down, and just he's so good.
And I mean, that's the big part, right? Is his defense. His defense is incredible. He always leads the league. He's up there with the top infielders, not just first baseman. He leads the first baseman, but he's like a top infielder in defense. And I think Christian Walker doesn't get the credit he deserves, and a big part of that is because he plays for the Arizona DiamondBacks. And I hate to say that. I also think it's because his name's Christian Walker, and it's just hard at times to like stand out when your name is just something like that. But I think that like a lot of people, including a lot of fans in LA, are very aware of who he is and how good he is. And I think like I don't blame him for trying to go out there and test the waters with free agency at this point in his career. It's his chance to probably get a big long-term deal, and at the very least, he could force the Diamondbacks' hand to give him, maybe more money than he was looking for, more money than they were offering him, possibly in an extension, right? So I don't know if those talks happened. I'm sure they did, because the Diamondbacks want to keep a guy like Christian Walker, a Gold Glove first baseman over there, who's just been a leader and a huge part of why the Diamondbacks reached, the World Series last year. I just think Christian Walker's value right now is possibly the highest it could ever be in his career. So
fair.
I don't doubt at all that he will at least test the waters. Like I said, I was surprised that they brought Lourdes back, not because of the Diamondbacks, but because of Lourdes's value, right? Coming off of a World Series and everything like that. Like, I really thought that it was his chance to go out and get some other team to overpay for him, essentially. And luckily he came back to the Diamondbacks for a fairly reasonable amount. So it feels good that he's locked up, and hopefully they can do the same with Christian Walker.
I think if last year's market is like this year, then there's a better chance you're signing Walker, in the sense of like, you know what I mean? It just felt like people weren't signing people last year. It was like, we're hesitant to give $100 million to Walker. Like, Marte's only making like $78 million. I mean, Walker, is he going to get 120? That seems kind of insane based on those numbers, but that might be the reality.
They probably would. I mean, that's like in the neighborhood of what Goldie was asking, and I'm sure they regret. I mean, Mike Hazen brings up to this day that, letting Goldie walk was one of his biggest regrets. So I imagine that they're going to make, bringing Christian back a priority. But it also makes sense that if they did give him, attempted to sign him or attempted to sign him to an extension, that he would want to wait to see what his value on the market was first. So I think, that makes a lot of sense. Logan, you might not be wrong, pal. You might not be wrong.
He's 33, so it's not like they're going to give him like 180 million or something. You know what I mean? They're not going to be insane.
But that's what I mean. Like, at this point, at 33, this is probably his last chance to get like a decent multi-year contract, and that it makes sense that he would, like I said, he would want to see what other teams are offering.
But he could probably get 5 years at 18 a year.
Probably.
Yeah.
I mean, 5 years seems like a bit much,
18.
but I mean, we've seen these teams giving 14 years and 100 years and however long they need to extend the contract out to make it make sense. But I mean, I would say probably, like maybe 18 and 4, or something like that.
Even that would work. Yeah.
I mean, for a player of his caliber, it makes sense. And like I said, it's just first basemen don't get the love for the defense that they have, because most of the time their defense isn't very good, but his is exceptional. Like, and we noticed that, like, it's to the point now where late in games when the Diamondbacks have a lead, it's like the 8th inning, Torrey regularly pulls Josh Bell and puts in Kevin Newman, who's a far better infielder, over at first base, just to try to make up for, Christian Walker not being there. So it literally takes 2 players to make up for Christian Walker.
Hear that.
He's a future Sacramento A. They're going to make a splash. That's what we're looking at. Right there. I want to get you out on this. Again, I really appreciate your time. I feel like it's been easy to talk with you. We're kind of ended up on 30 minutes here. I do this all the time. So no worries. I always go way.
He knew when we said 20, it was going to be long.
Well, I think 20, I go 30. That's kind of my mind. I do want to, Josh brought this up when we were doing the show, so I'm curious to kind of put full circle here with everything. Favorite D-backs player moments. I mean, I know probably there's some obvious ones, but like maybe you have some hidden gems there along the way that we're not aware of. I'll throw some old names at you too. But what do you got with some of the players that you kind of? It doesn't have to be great players. I'm a hardcore fan. It might be little guys like Jay Bell or more of you. So what do you got for some of those moments?
I'm a huge Jay Bell fan. You hit the nail on the head right there. I just love Jay Bell. I thought he was like the best, like. Because like you're brought up as a little leaguer to hit a certain way, and I thought that Jay Bell looked like the MLB logo when he was up there hitting, right?
With the glasses.
With the glasses on and everything. It was great. But I mean, obviously, like Randy Johnson probably has just provided me with so many moments. Like, not only as a fan, I mean, I can't tell you how much mileage we got out of him hitting a bird, and making the bird essentially explode, right? Not to mention the fact that, like, you really, like, I find myself sitting around to this day looking at his stats from back then and being like, this man was 41 years old doing this. Like, what the hell? Like, in what world is a guy that this good giving you this many innings and, doing it at the age that he was doing it, right? So, like, there's that, but there's also the fact that, like, since I covered this team, I've covered this team now for 13 years, right? And
Unreal.
so I've had a chance to be, like, around the retired, much nicer Randy Johnson that wasn't so nice to media back in the day, and now he's just
The photographer.
absolute...
You're a photographer.
Photographer Randy Johnson is just a delight to be around. He's a gem, right? But we've had some fun moments, and like one of my favorite moments was the wrestler Brian Danielson, the WWE wrestler. He came to the ballpark, and I'm a wrestling fan. I loved it. It was great to meet him. He was super cool. And he asked me, do you think Randy Johnson is going to be here today? And I was like, my guy, Randy Johnson works here. Like if you want to see him, he will come down to visit you. So there was this whole interaction where Randy Johnson came down and he was looking for the WWE wrestler. And he was looking around like, where is he? And someone was like, it's that guy right there. And the exact words out of his mouth were, that guy's the WWE champion, like with the most incredulous voice in the world, right? And then I got to see, Daniel Bryan come up to Randy Johnson and literally be a little kid where he's shaking his hand and looking up at him. And he's like, I've been a fan of you my whole life, because he's a Seattle kid. And, Randy Johnson obviously pitched in Seattle, right? So it's like, it was just a great, very wholesome all around moment, kind of to witness and to see all of it. And I'm like huge fans of both of those guys. So just to see him be a fan of Randy and to know what he kind of just means to so many people is awesome. And like, he just got inducted into the Hall of Fame. The Diamondbacks like have a Hall of Fame here in town too. So he got the baseball Hall of Fame, but he also got inducted here. And like, he's just, I for a guy that at times was so intense and always looked like he was just so angry playing the game at all times. He just looks like he loves life now when you see him. And like, that getting to see that version of Randy Johnson is very, very cool.
And what low-key favorite Randy Johnson moment is when he in that little brawl, right? Puts on the Giants hat. I don't know why. Yeah. Just kind of like a low-key, like kind of funny moment. Obviously, as an A's fan, I always like the Mark McGwire video where he takes him deep. So that's always what I go with.
Yeah.
A lot of on that one. Randy's one of the best. I threw out a couple for some reason. Tony Womack always to me is a guy that I make a lot of call with. Maybe it's the steal there and the single to get the rally started there.
And he never gets credit for that. He never gets, like, they always talk about the Gonzo hit, but we never talk about him. We never talk about him in the playoffs either that year, because he was incredible at times during that playoff run. And I mean, there's just
how old would you have been during that 0-1 run?
So I was 20.
Okay,
so I was 20.
So I was 8. I would have been. I would have just been graduate. I was a senior that year in high school. Yeah, and I was an A's fan. The Yankees came back and beat us when we were up 2-0. So like, I really wanted you guys to beat them that year. And I always remember thinking, my last impression about that series is like, there's not many teams that could lose the way you guys lost those back-to-back games and then win the World Series.
Yeah,
and then Mariano Rivera is the closer with the 1-1. Like, it was just an odd World Series altogether. And then, like, you think of those parts of it, it's like you couldn't lose any more heartbreaking games than you guys lost. Like, that's.
I think after game 2, we were already celebrating that it was over, right? You know what I mean? Like, whichever game it was where they scored like all those runs in it. But man. But I'll tell you, there's some interesting things about that I've kind of learned with time. And like, part of it was that the original like owners, that there's an ownership group that brought, baseball to the Valley here in Arizona. And like, they really had this idealistic view of what baseball was going to be. And meanwhile, Jerry Colangelo was like in the corner being like, ha, 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 you fools. And then like, they had like a huge drop in season ticket holders from season 1 to season 2, because the team was bad in the first season that they existed, like every franchise is. And they kind of panicked and they turned to Jerry and they were like, what did you say when you called us all fools? And he was like, yeah, I've been running the team called the Suns over there for a while. This town likes a winner, And so like, it was interesting to see the perspective on that, including like players like Travis Lee, who was traded for Kurt Schilling, and kind of how he felt like he was kind of like, sold a bill of goods there a bit, because he was kind of told that they were going to slow play the, rollout of this franchise. And they were going to take some years to build it up. and they were going to be okay with kind of like losing. And in the second year, they decided to make drastic changes and bring in Randy Johnson, and they won like 100 games. And
smart decisions, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I think that's the thing is like this. The city had so much success with this team so early on that then when the normal years of a baseball franchise rebuilding and stuff kicked in, it was hard. It was hard for a lot of people to kind of sit through. And we've had a couple of those stretches, and like it's nice for this team to be going through this right now, because what they're going through right now is with a group of very young guys, a bunch of 23, 24-year-olds that are out there doing this, on a daily basis. And they're all going to be part of this team for, a decent amount of the future. Like I don't see them, going the way the Marlins did or any other team where they start drastically selling off their pieces. This franchise is set and in a good position for a number of years, but the starting pitching, that's where there's a lot of questions about, because obviously Merrill Kelly's a free agent after this year, and then you have Zach Gallen is a free agent, after next season. So, what they're going to do there is still interesting, but they still have some good pieces here that'll be here for a while.
Yeah, you guys are very fascinating in that point. You're not like you're not a top 8 spender. You're probably never going to be in that area,
right?
You'll
right.
Probably be, but I would think as a fan base, if I was Phoenix, I would say, hey, there's no reason you can't be 15, 13. I would think that's a reasonable spot for you guys to be if you get the players. And you guys have also proven, like you said, you have that early success as a franchise that kind of puts the immediate tension on the fan base. Is like, this is kind of what we expect. We expect.
Yeah.
I mean, most people have to go 40 years without a win. Like that. That is the reality of fan bases here.
Padres still don't have a World Series. They've been around forever.
Let's remind them one more time, and the Mariners. I'm an A's fan. Will remind the Mariners as well. You do not have a World Series. Those two franchise. And somehow, I always love how you guys, as a kid, I was growing. The Mariners and the DiamondBacks rivalry. That's what we're putting. I was like, that's always kind of a funny thing to me as well. So they always have MLB always puts you as the rivalry for Seattle. I'm like,
oh yeah, no, there's always ridiculous stuff like that. Like,
how are they the rivalry?
how is our rival not the Tampa Bay Rays? The Diamondbacks have only won 4 games historically at the Trop. So there's that, and there's also the fact we both came into the league at the same time. Like I've always viewed them as like our rival team in the AL, and they don't want to do that apparently.
That's funny.
They should go against another team in Florida. They'll find someone else for us to fight with. Maybe it'll be you guys when you move to Las Vegas.
I don't want to start crying right now.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that.
Don't worry, we've been throughout the season.
I've been venting throughout the year. I look forward to my last show.
Hey, let me just say, as a person from the outside looking at it, it's been awful. And like the one thing I keep telling everybody, I keep saying this over and over again, is if this can happen to the A's, this can happen to any team in sports. Any team, your team is not safe, because if this can happen to the A's, it can happen to any franchise.
It's weird. Like, I was like, I've been to that stadium like 500. It's like, it's not like I used to have season tickets when I was younger. My dad had Raiders tickets. So Oakland, that part of it, it's everybody's like, well, don't want you just still root for them for their A's? I'm like, I'll probably eventually get there, but like there is like this point where you are kind of indebted to a city at the same time that you grew up going to. It's like the Giants, they live. I mean, I'm closer to San Francisco than I am Oakland, but I enjoy the Giants losing more than the A's winning. So like that's kind of where
I go watch them lose. You can do that.
do. That's where that is my fan base now at this point. I'm looking for them to lose with it naturally. The Cardinals are going to Nashville. That's what you got there, Brian. We get Logan shout there. Derek,
I mean, no, we got our AAA teams in Memphis already.
You might make it there then to Tennessee. Derek, I really appreciate your time. I know you joined us longer than you said. Like I said, follow them at PHNX Sports. Diamondbacks, they got a good show over there. Like I said, I've been kind of listening to you guys when Brandon was like, "Hey, I got this guy on." I was like, "Great!" I love it because I'm just a baseball junkie, and Edwards is too. Or we just love other teams. We kind of been, like you said, we've been doing the show all year. And then when I heard your show, I was like, oh, this guy definitely knows his baseball, but also the D-backs as well. So I was like, this is going to be great to have you on. So, and the fact that you gave us like 45 minutes, pretty awesome, man. So I appreciate you taking the time.
No worries at all. No worries at all. Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
Where can we find you guys at? Just for our people that join the show, where's a good spot to join you guys at? When you guys on? Where does that work?
So we usually go live during post game shows during the week, and then Monday we usually do a 1 p.m. show. Pacific Standard Time. Same thing usually like with Thursday. unless there's a big game that day, then we'll kind of switch it to a post game. Lately, it's just with all the fun this team has been having, it's been hard not to do as many post-game shows as possible. So usually that's where you can find us. But of course, we have a YouTube channel over at PHNX Sports, so make sure to check us out there. You can also follow our account at PHNX_DBacks on Twitter.
And we'll have those links below on the show here. And like I said, always a good show there with it. And like I said, you guys got a playoff run to possibly talk about
We
here.
do.
So you should have lots of good programming along the way here as well.
Yes.
We'll be tuning in.
I appreciate that. And we just added Archie Bradley to our roster too. So former Arizona DiamondBacks pitcher Archie Bradley is now part of our show. He joins us a couple times here before the postseason, awesome. And then he's going to be kind of locked in with me during the postseason, while our guy Jesse will be traveling with the team and bringing us whatever information we can get from the stadium. So again, make sure to join us. It's pretty fun.
I like how he said already postseason. I like the confidence there.
Yeah, you like that? Yeah,
I like that guy. I like the confidence there, Derek. No fun there with
it. Don't let the fans hear that. They'll get so mad at me if things go south.
We cut that on the short just for people. Yeah. We don't want that on the short. So, Derek, appreciate it, man. Hopefully, maybe if you guys make a playoff run, we can get you on here like we expect as well. So, best of luck with your show. You guys are killing it there. So, we hope to do it again soon, man. So, appreciate
you so much.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
Take care, man.
Yeah, bye.